All right, everyone, welcome to March's edition of the Kubernetes Chairs and Tech Leads meeting. My name is Paris still, I think. And we have, it looks like 12 of us on the line today. And today is triage for Tuesday, or T is for Tuesday and triage. So we have a little bit of a theme going on today. It's all triage. But first things first, we do have a code of conduct. Please be excellent to each other. Since it's not a huge group, we should be able to talk freely, but just in the case of somebody talking, raise your hand and we'll try to get to you. Thanks everybody for joining us today. So let's get right to the announcements. Big announcement is that the EU Contributor Summit is postponed. I don't think Jeff's on the line right now. Is Jeff on the line? I know
No.
Bob is. But just in a general way, just so I can get through announcements really quick, they are going to be doing some virtual things, more TBD. Yes, there's going to be an EU summit when it's postponed, so everybody's happy. TLDR, more coming soon. We have new tech leads and SIG docs. Are any of them on the line right now? Karen or Tim? I don't think so. I'm looking right now. I see Jim. Shout out to new tech leads and SIG docs. That's a whole new thing for SIG docs. They've never had tech leads before, so that's pretty awesome. They're taking that chair role and splitting it so that they can have some different things going on there. And then we also have new chairs and SIG instrumentation. I see both of them on the line right now. Welcome, Elena and Han, to our lovely party here of chairship and tech leadship. Well, in their case, chairship. If you need anything from us, this is where you come for the good stuff. And also the chair and tech lead Slack channel is good for you too. And then it looks like there is an announcement of a new KEP as well that chair should be taking a look at. Who added this to the agenda? Stephen, do you want to give a really quick overview?
Yeah. So Working Group LTS has been working on discussing LTS. Nick, you're actually here and you wrote the KEP. So if you want to talk more about it, and then I can add some color from the SIG release side.
Yeah, so we've been working on, hi everyone, I'm Nick Young. I am a co-chair of LTS. And we've been working on a KEP about this for a while. The proposal that we have up at the moment is to extend the support window by one release currently, or basically to make it a calendar year. That means that the support window will be one calendar year. It's for two reasons. One, to make it so that it's easier for people to fit this into their yearly cadence, but also a lot of stuff about changing anything to do with support is kind of unknown. And this is also intended as a way for us to find out from everybody what are the costs of changing anything to do with support, what do we need to do to do anything more substantial. This is not the end state.
What do you want from chairs here? I mean, obviously, like review, anything else? Do you want them to like get it out to their crews? What?
Yeah, so if we could have chairs take a look, especially people in release testing, and I think there's a few other ones for Node and those are the main ones, I think.
Cluster lifecycle.
Yeah, cluster lifecycle. Yeah, and I mean it touches most of Kubernetes, so it'd be really good if everyone could have a look and say, hey, does this actually concern me? And then if it does, pass it off to your to whatever group you're part of.
So I will say in advance that it will concern you somehow. We may not know the shape of how it will concern you just yet, but please, please, please take a look at it. I know that from the KEP, there was some mention of like, well, what if we expanded the, what if we decrease the interval of releases, right? Did 3 releases a year instead of 4, then you would get your yearly support because of what we already do in terms of support cycle, the N-3. So yeah, there are a lot of unknowns right now. Like Nick said, please take a moment, even if it's 15 minutes, just to look this over and put your stamp on it or put your comments on it.
Awesome.
Thanks as well, Stephen, for putting it on here.
All right, does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments about any of the announcements that were just said? All right, moving along here. All right, so let's just do a really quick last meeting recap. I actually might want to spend a little less time on this, but I wanted to review some of the open issues. I've been trying to get good with filing issues based on actions that we have here, or at least conversations that we've had here, and things that we've drawn out from those conversations. Let me share my screen too, just in case folks don't have access. Okay, so here's one of the issues that I set. This is based off of multiple conversations that we've had from January, February, and then interval conversations here and there, whatever. This is like the concept or the idea of what a chair rule book or handbook would look like. Because we've heard from, and again, I'm just setting context for those who are just joining us from first time callers things. Some chairs were saying how they wanted to make their own for their own SIG and things like that. And I was just very curious to see what a baseline rule book would look like based off of our SIG governance docs and other governance docs. And this is kind of what I drew from that. And again, these are like the things that in the duties and responsibilities section, if it doesn't have like a suggested by next to it, let me get my little pointer. Like if it doesn't have a suggested by someone next to it, it means that it came from like one of these two docs up here verbatim. It's just not necessarily in this like duties and responsibilities fashion. So anyway, I just wanted to bubble that up as please comment, leave any comments here. And then what we can do now is just we'll park this for if we have time at the discussion at the end. Okay. Did anybody have any quick comments or concerns about the chair rulebook? All right. And stopping my share. And then the next one that needs to be highlighted is the doc that will explain some kind of like baseline and expectation of communications for chairs. So, we always hear from chairs that there's so much communication everywhere. Where do I check? What do I check? Oh, I think I'm checking everything. Oh no, come to find out I'm not on the next thing, whatever it is, right? So coming up with some kind of like baseline of expectations for you all. So like, where should you be checking? Like for instance, must check the SIG leads distro once every 2 weeks. Something like that. Things like for security issues, whether it's Zoom security, whether it's product security, etc. And then also, if you are new to this call and have not been on before, Taylor in SIG Docs created a quick spreadsheet for us from conversations that we've had on previous calls from very specific individuals and what their preferences were in this doc. So if you were not on those calls, go ahead into that doc that's linked in there and add your preferred communication channels. And that's what we're going to do the baselines off of. So for instance, right now, it looks like everyone's on Slack based on, and everybody prefers Slack for the most part, as far as like a way to get a hold of them direct. So like in the case of the release team having an issue, they would like the baseline here would be the release team will need to DM you on Slack, and then you have, 72 hours to get back to them or something. That would be like the SLA. But cutting out some of those very specific cases, especially in the case for new chairs who are just getting used to the ecosystem, I think this will be really important. Okay, I see a chat come up too. Super quick, what was it? Okay. So any comments, questions, or concerns about, or even like, what are we doing here if you're new to the call for this? All right, that's awesome too. All right, stopping that share. All right, and that's pretty much what we've got going on from wrapping up some of the other calls. So again, just getting a baseline of comms and SLAs and really getting a baseline of what we do as chairs. and seeing if there's any kind of standardization that we could do. So your comments are definitely appreciated on both of those issues. Does anybody have any general things that they want to say about any of the last meetings, or any takeaways or things that they learned or want to share from anything that we've done so far?
Just plus oneing the expectations, because I think that the role is hard, and it's widely undefined. Sometimes we're doing stuff that we don't necessarily know we're supposed to be doing or not doing. So I think that having expectations, especially for new chairs, is going to be useful.
Awesome. All right. Now we are to the main event. No, I'm just kidding. Not the main event. Now we're doing a KEP overview right now. Stephen, if you want to share your screen too for the KEP, and Stephen's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the issue triage land as far as this KEP's concerned, and why you as chairs should be interested in this. Take it away.
So can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, or at least all.
Okay, yeah, okay. So the idea was essentially we have a role in the release team called bug triage, and bug triage is kind of a conflation of bug and issue and PR triage. So the idea of this role is throughout the cycle, they essentially watch all of the PRs that are in the milestone for Kubernetes. And so for this KEP, currently, right now we've got 917 open pull requests and 2,093 open issues, right? And that's a lot, right? We've got, what is it, 30 something SIGs, right? 20, late 20s, early 30s SIGs. Even still, a lot of the triage expectations or a lot of the decision-making approvals happen at the top level, right? So the technical leads and the sub-project owners and the chairs of the SIGs making decisions on, again, 917 open pull requests and 2,093 issues. So that's kind of, given the amount of people that we have, I don't think that that's tenable. And what we often find in, at least from the release team, we're bringing on, every cycle, we're bringing on a set of new shadows for each of these roles, as well as a new lead for role-specific duties. And these people may not necessarily have the appropriate context to be able to triage something as a SIG would, right? So the thought process is, what if we could, make it easier for you to do that job? And we had opened an issue somewhere. There's some mailing list discussions going back all the way to 2016. We had opened an issue, so deadlines are horrible. This email from Tim Hawken is pretty good around being able to, finding the time and not being oversubscribed to actually execute on doing triage or doing reviews for issues and PRs. And there's also, yes. This issue that was open around the Kubernetes triage and workflow improvements. And this kind of spun out, like we talked about a lot of things. I proposed a state machine for some of the labels and stuff. So eventually we said, hey, we need a KEP for this, right? And that stalled out. Because I think that what people have been trying to do is, I think we've been concerned with boiling the ocean and solving all of these problems instead of trying to get like one net improvement out of this, right? So this is a fairly long thread. If you want to check that out, it's linked in the KEP. So the idea, I state at the beginning, like, this is provisional, the details are intentionally light. There are a bunch of discussions that are already happening. Like, we want to scope a single deliverable first, right? So I'd like to figure out, with regards to user stories, I dropped some quick ones here. Like I want to be able to easily triage my groups as a group lead. I want to be able to easily triage my group's backlog of open issues and PRs to accelerate merge velocity and issue resolution. For reviewers and approvers, I want a simple system to categorize issues and PRs in my purview so I can prioritize what to review first. And as contributors, I want to be able to submit issues or PRs and understand how the community works to address new submissions, have assurance that they will be routed to the correct group, and have them addressed in a timely manner. And I think that those are all reasonable requests. So the phase 0 that we're proposing is 2 labels, right? A needs triage label and the needs triage and a life cycle ready label. I don't really care what the labels are called, just that we have some first system in place that we can start to tweak around. So the idea behind the needs triage label is that it serves the same function as the needs kind, or it would operate in the same way that the needs kind, needs priority, needs SIG labels operate. Right, you have a label and you have the needs triage label that is that will exist on an open PR, or excuse me, an open issue. For PRs, I would consider a review to be the triage of the issue at the matter, you know, the issue that's being discussed, right, or the change that's being discussed. So that's kind of a solved problem. But from the issue side, the idea would be every issue that comes in would be labeled as needs triage, right? And when you apply some label, whether it's lifecycle ready, triage ready, some bot command that essentially remove, you know, those 2 labels would be mutually exclusive, and applying this bot command lifecycle ready or triage ready or whatever we want to call it would remove the needs triage label, right? So from there, however your SIG works to do stuff, you would do that, right? Basically, we just want to figure out, we just want to get you to the point where you can determine if it's something someone in your SIG has touched already, or something that someone has touched and appropriately triaged, right? Like this is big work, this is little work, we're going to do it in 119, or we can't do this until 121 because blah, 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 right? So this is, so some of the discussion that's happened has been around, so let me pause there and ask if there are any questions.
Yeah, actually, I do have a question. So lifecycle ready is triaged, right?
Yeah, lifecycle ready would be considered to be triaged. So some of the stuff that Tim mentions in the KEP is that maybe lifecycle isn't the right area to choose, or subgroup to choose, right? Maybe it should be triage. We already have a set of triage labels that I'm pretty sure no one uses. So we could delete a bunch of those and repurpose, or delete some, repurpose some, depending on how we feel. I think it goes back and forth with the triage stuff where people have used them in the past, or they haven't. They're kind of, from what I've seen, they're functionally useless right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just clarifying. I was not sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to be clear, that this lifecycle ready label does not exist yet. Neither of them do.
Maybe this is for a later discussion, but how do you see this interacting with the idea that issues get stale over time? Like triage, the way that it's been triaged today makes sense today, but it could be that 90 days from now, it makes less sense, or more information is needed or something.
So yeah, so this is kind of why we were thinking that maybe lifecycle isn't the right group to choose. Maybe it's triage, right? So like something that is triage remains triage. If it's also stale, that's different from it not having been triaged in the past.
Yeah, I think that was my main objection the last time we discussed this.
Okay. So, okay, yeah, more ideas, more things. This is mostly a discussion point because we want to make sure that whatever thing we put in place works for a large portion of people. I don't think we're going to catch everyone, but I want to make sure that it works for a bunch of people.
So what do you need from the folks on the call right now?
Opinions, reviews.
Should we take the silence as lazy consensus?
We can.
Well, I guess that's more of like a broad question to the group. Should we take your silence as lazy consensus? And you actually don't have to answer that on the recording either. I know that's like, confrontation.
On the spot, yeah.
Yeah. But no, if you do, my TLDR there is to please go with Steven or somebody on the CAP or comment on the CAP, or else it will be lazy consensus. So
I think, and I think I'm next after Steven to present what we do in API machinery, but I wonder the people from the SIGs that are already doing some triage, they will try to understand how does this proposal fit or, fit together with what they are doing. That was the reason I was silent, because I was talking to Han, we've been doing our thing that I'm going to briefly explain. It's not perfect, and I'm trying to see how can we, for example, I'm pretty sure we have a backlog of issues that are old, and that's why they are there. Do we go and tag all of them? Do we, do something ad hoc until we get into a normal state where we can apply this process? I don't know. I'm thinking out loud on those things. Just that.
Oh, that's good. That's why we're here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that what we want to do is make sure that it's lightweight enough. Like this is why we're only proposing 2 labels and very minimal workflow, because we want to make sure that it's lightweight enough that we're not going to stomp on whatever process you have that already exists, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to, yeah.
I guess what I was trying to say is maybe the comment is you will find people from all the different SIGs that are doing different flavors of triage. Hopefully we are doing different flavors of triage. So I guess, the challenge is going to be, well, I guess you kind of answered that. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
It's lightweight enough that, can be adapted to any of the processes.
And it's also for SIGs that may not even have a process, right?
Yeah.
To just give them a starting point to develop one.
Yeah.
Right. So what I can do, there have been comments on the KEP. I would like more SIG chairs and technical leads to comment on the KEP. Once I'll give it a few days or something, and then I'll rework some of that. And then maybe we can call a timeout for end of next week after I've reworked some stuff to see if we can move on some of this. Aaron has something.
Yeah, sorry. I just figure, well, there are a bunch of different SIG leads here. I guess my only other thought is maybe it's kind of unclear whose responsibility it is to triage sometimes. Maybe I'm selfishly bringing this up as like a horizontal SIG that gets dinged for a lot of things. And oftentimes our triage is, that's not our SIG's responsibility. It's just like, I don't know, making sure this process allows us to do handoff and like make sure we haven't like triaged somebody's issue for them. Does that make sense?
We often just reassign the SIG and remove our SIG to be able to indicate that. And if I understood the labels correctly, doing that, we would still be able to keep a needs triage label on it, right?
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, if you look at the state machine that I have here is out of date at this point. But if you check this out, and I didn't want to redraw it until we had more ideas. But if you look at the triage state, basically the entry criteria The description is SIG triages to, let me just share my screen again. So SIG triages issue to determine if it needs more info, should be closed or moved to the backlog. So having the SIG label and needs triage, the human actions would be needs. I don't know if I want to do this needs info thing, whether or not you close it, if it's going into the backlog or it's going into some iceboxy thing, you apply kind and priority, right? And yeah, this definitely needs to be reworked. But the idea is that, you know, at a baseline, ideally it has a SIG, and anyone, I think a decent chunk of contributors have enough context to realize that it's not their SIG, and maybe hand it off. Aaron, I run into the same thing with the SIG release stuff, especially, you know, you have the kind of the you know, the intersection of the SIG release stuff, the SIG testing stuff, where you know, the blocking and informing jobs, where like if someone calls a failing test for a job that's a GCE job that technically doesn't really have an owner, the default owner becomes SIG release, right? So it's something that we may not have any context on, but our people have to poke at. So yeah, I think the first step is actually determining that it's in the right SIG place, and then handing it off if not. But yes, that would not remove the needs. That would not remove the needs triage label.
All right, I've been trying to capture some notes, but if there's anybody on the line that said something that they want to capture in notes, I know Han, I did not get your first question. So if you want to put that in there, that would be awesome.
And
right.
and yeah, and Han, I know you pinged me, and we were chatting a little bit about this. Please put your comments on it, because it sounds like y'all are hurting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we track our stuff. Well, Feday's going to go into it in the Word doc.
All right. And then next up, and then by the way, if anybody has any more questions, concerns, comments, let's just park that for the discussion. But right now, let's go into Fedi. Fedi is going to share briefly what API machinery has been up to as far as triage is concerned. Oh, there's somebody in the room. I see it. It's already the work from home, the work from home goodness. All right, Fedi, you're up.
So good. Yeah. Let me see if I can share my. Which one it is? Okay, give me a second. 1 second, because it says a lot of Google Chrome things and. Okay, this is like TV. Let me close the things that I should not be sharing. And this one and this one. I think I closed all of them. Not all of them. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
I can share too if you've got issues. You're fine.
Yeah, let's try one more try. I had too many things open. Yeah, this is the working from home thing. Let's see if this is what I want to share. Yeah. Do you see my screen? Is that the presentation?
Just says.
I see black.
Yeah, we see black. You're probably using dual screens, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Why is that? Okay. Can you present for me?
I'm on it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No worries.
Sorry about that.
All good.
So it's very simple. You know, I just put together a couple of slides. I don't think we have a perfect process, but our biggest value is that we've been doing this for the last 2 years, and I think it's valuable. We have some lessons learned and some things to share. So a little bit of history. 2018, internally at Google, we realized that, you know, there was a large amount of pull requests and issues coming and labeling SIG API machinery, and we needed something to keep up to them. You know, when we were not doing this, what we get is, you know, random people pinging you, hey, can you review my pull request? Hey, I opened this issue 2 months ago. Nobody's paying attention. Can you assign somebody? Or can we discuss in the next SIG meeting, etc. Sometimes it bubbled up into the SIG meetings, which is okay, but usually the SIG meetings happen every 2 weeks. And also they are not the right place to get into, if you have 40 or 80, as we have some weeks, pull requests, you cannot go through them in those meetings. So we started with the simple idea of getting together twice a week. Yes, I can give access later to the deck. Twice a week, 30 minutes. Sometimes you need more, but we don't go overtime, but sometimes you need less. We started doing that internally, and we realized that this was a huge value for Google. So then last year we opened it. So basically what we do is, I cannot share my screen, so I cannot do it live, but we have two and please don't laugh. And I think having the cap and having a process is going to be great, because I will tell you what we do. So we have a very simple query, like you can open one of those, like the PRs queries if you want. So everything that is an issue and is open, sorry, it's not open, I will explain later, and is labeling API machinery. So we track, let's say that last week or last meeting, we were able to go up to, I don't know, one of the ones that are at the bottom, 88966. So we track that number, and then we go through all the ones that are new since last meeting, okay? Can we go back to the slide? Thank you. So we go through every single one of the pull requests on the list since last meeting, and also through every single one of the issues. We read through the details. Sometimes it requires more attention, like we need to see what files are changing, what is the change. You will get, I'm sure everybody here is familiar, depending on if the person is somebody new, or everybody has a different style. Some people put more details, it's super clear what they are trying to do. Sometimes you need to decipher what they are trying to do. So this is what David was saying. First of all, I think we determine if that is SIG API machinery or not. Sometimes it is API machinery and it's also other SIGs, so we might label other SIGs too, hoping that that will bring it to their attention. Sometimes because API machinery is it's in a special place in the code, there is a lot of files that are in our folders but are not necessarily API machinery. So sometimes we get tagged into pull requests that are not necessarily us, so we might untag ourselves to make it clear that we are not paying attention to that. And because this is a community, if anybody feels that it's wrong to untag it, the conversation is open, can tag us back and we will take a look. Usually one of the two TLs of the SIG is present in these meetings. So Tuesdays we have David, Thursday we have Daniel, and then there is a lot of other random people from the SIG, not only from Google, from different companies and from the open source in general that participate. What we have developed, I think it's a little bit informal, but everybody has kind of a sense of who is a good person to look at something, depending on the area. So what in the end we want to make sure that we either CC people to make them aware or assign it to people so they can take care of the issue. I want to say the last two things, 3 and 4. We use this opportunity to tag some issues as help needed or good first issue. I don't remember the exact wording, but we do that. The other detail is we skip cherry picks. We skip the ones that are close. We get a lot of traffic usually in API machinery, so we try to optimize for that. And number 4 is since I've been more involved in API machinery and I become the chair, some people come and say, hey, what can I do? to participate more on the SIG. Where can I start? I always suggest, come join these meetings. Just, sit there, listen, learn. If you feel like there is something, an issue or a PR that sounds interesting to you, speak up or send me a message. I will, see you on that one. You can see the progress. You can use it as an opportunity to learn. And the last slide. Yeah, what else? So I think the biggest lesson learned, and I hope that Han and David would agree, is that we make it regularly and consistently. There are weeks when we are getting closer to code freeze, where it gets crazy. We get like, 2 full pages of pull requests, which is like, 100 pull requests in 2 days or something like that. There is no way that we can have a large, 3-hour meeting to go through that like every week. Would be crazy, right? So consistency and regularity, I think, pays off. That's great. Those are our numbers. We could be doing better. I suspect a lot of those issues are issues that are there since before we started this entire process 2 years ago. So yeah, this is one of the things that I am interested into exploring, maybe as part of this CAP or this discussion, which is how do we go back in time and do archaeology on things that are timing out, 3 years old or stuff like that. The other thing that I think the CAP is great because today is really hard to query, and that's why we are keeping in a shared document the number of the last one we triaged on the previous meeting, so we can follow through that. We meet twice a week. Yeah, that is our playlist at YouTube. We sometimes don't record it, my fault. I know Paris has been asking me to record it every time. But we recorded the last time, last Thursday. So if you are curious, you can take a look at that. It's like, 13 minutes. Yeah, that's what I have. Did I miss anything, Han, David?
I shared the pointer doc that we use for the API machinery.
Thank you.
Triage, yeah. It's in the Zoom link, so.
Is this it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is how we keep track of the numbers. It's the best that we can find. You also don't want to do it super sophisticated. We look at GitHub and the tools they provide. I had somebody on my team some time ago, like 2 years ago, also build an application to see how much we were assigning to people to avoid overloading people. I don't know. I think we want to keep it lightweight and simple. If anybody is getting too much because the person that is running the meeting doesn't realize, can't speak up. It's very informal, but it's consistent.
You brought up a great question that I am documenting right now, which is how do you deal with issues in PRs that are several years old / stale / not stuff you're familiar with?
Yeah, that's a shortcoming of our system because we only keep a pointer to the most recent thing that we've swept through.
Yep.
So our system does not allow us to sweep through the same thing twice, which is why we would love that functionality from the triage cap.
Stephen, did you have your listening ears on that one?
What? No. Yeah, I got you.
All right. Okay. Questions, concerns, comments for either FETI or API machinery triage?
And everybody is welcome to come and participate, even just to listen and see if you like it. You don't to give us feedback.
What's one thing you tried that didn't work?
I think trying too hard to keep track of who was supposed to do what, what was assigned to everybody, and did they do what they said they were going to do? It's impossible. It's too much. I mean, for the big initiatives, we are doing that, but with the amount of traffic that we get, is impossible. So I rely a lot on people, basically, which is what we do here in open source, right? Being responsible and coming back to us if they feel that they can't do any of the things we ask them to do, or they need help or stuff like that.
That's a good one. Anybody else?
I really like the idea of triage teams or having triage events. I think that I was kind of failing to see it until chatting on this call, but like release has a set of different triage teams, right? So bug triage, the enhancements team, all these people that are doing, I mean, it's a lot of it is doing work so that the leads don't have to, right? And that has worked out pretty well for us, at least. I mean, we have these, we have it in place for essentially the quarter, right? So every milestone gets a new set of people. So I'm trying to figure out how to better share that knowledge across milestones, because the body of, the body of understanding that you build up while learning how to do triage for the enhancements or for bugs or for failing tests, is, I think is globally useful, right? Not just a release, but everywhere, right? So just rambling.
To connect with that one, this is the space, like, our API machinery triage meetings is the space where we get, failing tests and the things that, come from the release team when they are failing.
That's a good, that's something good to document too, is like a value add. All right, well, now we are at the discussion phase of our journey. We can stop I kind of don't want to stop recording because I do want to ask some poignant questions to y'all that I think others might take value in. But on the same topic of triage, same questions for you that I asked Fetty, like what have your groups tried that didn't work? What are some things that do work for your groups? Anything that you want to share with your crew, or maybe other open-ended questions like Fetty's question, hey, how do you deal with issues in PRs that are several years old? Does anybody want to go first?
I guess I was going to ask the question, maybe it's an open-ended question, like how do you come to consensus on won't fix? Where like, this is just too old to be relevant now, or we just don't have, we're not going to get to it, versus I feel like there may be a lot of issues that remain open because we often use a much softer, like, yeah, I guess that would be cool if you want to do it. But the amount of people who swing by and pick things up is a little low.
So I've got sorry, go for it. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I have something to say, but I will not say it on the recording.
Okay, we can maybe go off recording for this, but just one other example I'll give is I feel like there are often issues I see that periodically age into life cycle stale and then get refreshed perpetually. And so I take that as a signal that like somebody cares that it stay open, but nobody cares enough to actually do anything about it. And I feel like eventually that begins to accumulate a lot of cruft. And I'm not, like Fatty, I'm not entirely sure what to do with it, because maybe sometimes these document like known deficiencies that would be nice to fix, but they're so low priority that the history speaks for itself that nobody has decided it's high priority enough to do anything about.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't have a silver bullet for that. I am fortunate to be surrounded in the SIG with very good people. They are very practical, and I think we don't keep things open just to keep them open and be nice. We can still be nice and have a discussion in the SIG meeting about a proposal, and decide as a SIG if we want to move forward or not, and see, give people the opportunity. We had a lot of those. Sometimes in the triage meetings, there is an issue that is a little bit controversial, or it's divided the opinions. So maybe that one is worth to ask the author to put a slot in the agenda of the SIG meeting. Come in, let's discuss it, and let's see what we can do. That's my take there. I would not just keep things open. We still have the labels, low priority, long-term roadmap, and stuff like that. But yeah, try to be.
Yeah. Also, this concern really pertains mostly to issues and not PRs. And the vast majority of the things that we do in our bug scrub is triage PRs. That tends to be numerically the most significant part of our triage process. I mean, this might not be the same for all SIGs, but for APM machinery, it tends to be very PR heavy.
And Stephen?
Hey, yeah, so I try not to, I'm trying to care less about the things that are stale or rotten. Not to say that they're not important, but like if you take something like the, we have an issue that was opened by Joe in March of 2017 to move containers out of like Google containers, right? And we're only now doing that because I mean, part of it is like we didn't have access to do that before, and we didn't know the shape of the problem, right? So like some things will bubble themselves back up, but I spend more time on triaging active issues and PRs than the, and I think it's more important to triage the active PRs and issues than the older ones. If it's kind of like all of us probably have insane inboxes, and if it's the the saying, like if it's important, they'll email again, right? Like, so like if it will, I think if it's important to the community or the SIG or the area sub-project, whatever you want to call it, it will re-raise itself. And then it becomes something fresh that you triage, right? So like I try to prioritize the freshness of the issue or the PR as opposed to the length of time it's been open.
I'm going to stop recording now. Okay. All right. If you're listening to this and you're a chair and tech lead, you better come to Thursday's meeting. Thanks. Bye. Stop recording.